Hi, Kyle. Thanks for joining us on Funnel Vision podcast. Thrilled to have you on and help you share your expertise, tips, tricks, and everything for our community of sales professionals.
Hi, Alana. Thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here and be part of the show.
Yeah. So, first question. What is one game-changing tactic that you use to build strong client relationships?
Yeah, that's a great question. The thing about sales that I think about is it's not so much about tactics as it is about really learning your business, right? So the way I would answer that is I would say the best salespeople ask the best questions and then they shut up and listen. And it's really about going into a meeting and being curious and inquisitive and really trying to understand your client and what their needs are and how you may have a solution for them and actually taking an interest in what they do and how they do it and how they're unique from their competitors. And so it's really about asking a lot of questions and really actively listening and then taking it from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right, is that asking the questions and understanding their unique model, what is different, what differentiates them from their competitors, not just about you and what differentiates you, but what differentiates them, like learning their business and in a way where you said like you're actively listening and truly caring. I think that's a game changer. And it's you're right, it's not a tactic, it's more just like who you are as a person and how you approach everything.
Yeah, well, what a lot of salespeople do is getting an appointment's hard, right? So they spend a lot of time. There's a lot of effort that goes into getting that appointment, and a lot of times they show up for that appointment and they're excited because they've got an appointment, and they very early into that meeting start, presenting their product, or maybe they're asking questions specific to that product or service, but they're missing the opportunity to dig deeper and to really learn about that opportunity. And that's what actually separates a great salesperson from a not so great salesperson is the ability to really learn about the business and what matters to the business and then tie their solution back into that need. And if you don't do that, it's very hard to get back to it. If you start in the sales conversation early on talking about your products or even having questions that are related to your products, you're going to miss the bigger picture in a lot of cases.
Right, absolutely. What do you think is the biggest piece or the best piece of sales advice you've ever received, and how has that changed your approach?
Yeah, a great question. The best piece of sales advice. Well, I've been very fortunate in my life. I've been given a lot of great advice. I think the thing that resonates with me the most is that I've implemented in my life is something called that I call that I was given this advice, but I've now kind of taken ownership over my life. But it's called motivation follows action. And it's an interesting saying that, in sales, again, a lot of the work that needs to be done, right? If you think about cold calling or knocking on a door or dealing with a difficult conversation or dealing with objections or a lot of the things that come up in your day to day life as a salesperson, they're hard. And a lot of salespeople are looking to be motivated. I'm not feeling motivated today. I don't feel like making 50 calls. I don't feel like doing it. The reality is that you're never going to feel motivated. The way to get motivated is to start. Start making some dials, pick up the phone, maybe you get your teeth kicked in a couple times, or maybe you don't, but get in the rhythm, get in the zone, and just start. And before you know it, you'll be motivated and you'll be on the right track to get things done. So motivation follows action is advice that was given to me when I was very young in my sales career. And it's something that I actually use on a daily basis to stay engaged and stay ahead of the things that are less fun to do in the world of sales.
I think that that holds true for for so many things, like even outside of sales as well. Like I use
One,
that advice with my kids also. Like things don't just happen, right? You have to make them happen, and as you go through the process, like that motivation or that excitement and all of the things, like you have to do the little things that you don't want to do to get to where. it gets you one step closer. Like every single thing you do takes you one step closer. And that's the same in
Yeah.
sales, right? Like you've got to make the calls. Nobody wants to make the calls. Like, you've just got to do it. And as you do it, you get each time you make a call and each no, gets you one step closer to yes, like we say.
Yep. Yep. And it's actually based on psychological research called flow. I can't ever pronounce the author's name, but he wrote a book that I read a long time ago. It's called Flow. So when you actually get in the zone, that's a psychological thing that happens in your mind. And the reward is actually doing the thing itself as opposed to the outcome. So that applies really well in sales, especially for like cold calling or knocking on doors, because you have to do a lot of them to get the outcome. And if you can focus on just the doing of the thing, right? The doing of the cold call and trying to do it the best of your ability, it'll actually psychologically renew you and you'll feel like you're in the zone. So you'll do it better. And even if you don't get the outcome that you desire, you'll feel good at the end of it. So it's a pretty interesting philosophy. And I actually read that several years after I had been given this advice and it had applied it to my life. So it made sense where it was like actually psychological as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I haven't like heard that, but that's super interesting. I want to
Yeah.
get your ideas on like AI. I mean, AI is all over now, especially in sales. Like, how do you see it changing the sales game and the future of sales?
Yeah, AI is a very, very interesting thing that's happening in sales and everywhere, quite frankly. And there is a right and I believe a wrong way to use AI. I think where I see AI really changing will be not so much in the selling part of the sales cycle, but there's a lot of incredible tools that are coming out that'll speed up some of the prospecting work. So unfortunately, I think we all see right now some of the wrong ways to use AI. I don't know about you, but I get about 25 emails a day that are clearly AI generated. They're not personalized and they go straight to the trash can. And that unfortunately is a lot of people are using AI the wrong way. However, the right way to use it, and there are some really cool tools out there, um, you know, for example, prospecting the right people to reach out to. There's AI tools out there that can really speed that process up. So if you have a sort of a niche client or a niche product, which most of us do to a certain extent, there's great tools that can kind of search for those types of potential buyers that can speed up that process so that when you are picking up the phone or making an email, you're emailing or contacting a more likely candidate to actually want to hear what you're talking about. There's great tools, just, basic stuff like call recording, summaries, stuff like that. I see AI taking away a lot of the repetitive tasks that are required in sales. But what I don't see AI doing is taking away the human component, right? The people to people sales conversations. I don't think that ever goes away.
Yeah, I think it's very much the same as like we're sales, Talent Harbor, we're sales recruiters. And it's the same thing. There's so many tools as far as like say as recruiting where you could use AI in the process, the research and the figuring out who to contact, getting people's contact information, comparing resumes to job descriptions, things like all that you do that do the little tasks, but it doesn't take away that human element of, where it's, sales recruiting and sales recruiting and sales recruiting in general is there's so much human understanding of motivations and relationship building. And I agree, I don't think that is stuff that you want to use AI for. um but all the other tasks that you're doing, there's great tools out there.
Yeah, I mean, you see stuff out there, and I always get a kick out of this. I see stuff out there, and sometimes this comes from really incredible tools, where they'll even say things like cold calling is dead, right? And the reality is that's not true. Cold calling is not dead. But is there a better way to cold call? Is there a smarter way to cold call? I think that is relevant, and maybe there is a better way to do it. But if you're a salesperson thinking that you can automate your prospecting completely, the reality is I don't think that exists, and I don't think that'll ever truly exist. But there are some pretty interesting tools that can make your prospecting journey a lot more comfortable And prospecting is unquestionably the hardest part of any sales job, is getting that first meeting, right? Navigating through all the weeds to try to find that person who will be willing to talk to you is the hardest part. So tools that make that easier for you are tools that you should look at that are interesting. And there's definitely some cool ones out there.
Yeah, that's great. What do you think is something that a salesperson should stop doing immediately if they want to become more successful?
Trying to sell something. Stop trying to sell something. Try to solve a problem instead, right? So I have this analogy that I talk about all the time. Selling, and a lot of salespeople, I think this, but selling is not about taking someone who has no need and no interest for your product and somehow magically converting them to a buyer. So stop trying to sell something to someone who doesn't need it. Rather, go find the opportunities. Sales is about finding opportunities. And I use the hunting and farming is such a common analogy that I think many people have heard in the world of sales, right? Hunting meaning you have to go find new customers, and farming meaning your job is primarily about growing current relationships and strengthening them and whatnot. But hunting is a great analogy because when you think about hunting, you think about, taking a shot, if you will, right? When the reality about hunting is you spend most of your time walking through the woods looking for an opportunity to even have a chance to take a shot. And that couldn't be a truer analogy of what a hunting type sale really is. It's about turning over every stone, right? Think about someone on the beach with a metal detector, right? Scanning. You have to scan the whole area. If you miss one little area, you might miss that little jewel that was under the sand. Sales is just like that. It's not about trying to sell something. It's about searching for the right opportunities.
You're absolutely right about that. I love that analogy. I have not heard that, anything like that before, but you're absolutely right. It's not just about going out with your bow and arrow, however you're hunting, and, taking shot after shot after shot too. Like it is about finding the perfect opportunity and the perfect, setup, let's say.
Yeah.
That I love that. Um, so let's talk a little bit about, sales talent and hiring salespeople. It's tough, and it's tough especially to find those hunters. Those are the hardest people to find. Those are the people that have, the skills that you want and that every company needs. Do you have any go-to strategies for spotting, great salespeople?
Yes, and yes, I first and foremost will agree. It is incredibly difficult. I've been doing it for many, 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 many years, and I still make mistakes doing it, just to throw that out there. But it is very hard. And so there are a lot of things that I do that I think are valuable for anyone that's out there that's looking to hire a great salesperson. It starts with understanding the job. Okay. So it starts with really creating an ideal candidate profile and really putting some thought into what traits and qualities does the perfect salesperson have for this particular role in our particular company, and actually spelling out what are the key attributes that are going to make them successful. So an example, you mentioned hunting, right? If this is a big hunting job, if they're going to be required to find a lot of new customers, you're going to have to identify some of the traits that allow someone to be successful in that role. For example, someone who's very competitive, someone who is a self-starter, right? Somebody who's done it before, right? Can prove that they've generated their own leads, not just been given a handful of leads. So there's certain things that you're going to want to spell out, right? If it's an account manager role, those things may not exist at all, right? So it starts with having a really, really clear understanding of what that ideal candidate looks like. From there, you need to have a really thorough hiring process. I always recommend using a recruiter unless you have a better way to do it, but it takes a lot of time, as you know, to go out and vet through candidates and resumes and ask them questions, have conversations with them to vet that they even match the criteria. But outside of that, just if you use a recruiter, you still need a good hiring process internally, right? You need to have interview guides that are specifically tailored to answer the questions that you're seeking to answer based on that ideal candidate profile. In addition to that, I always recommend some form of an assessment. Assessments is a different data set that you can allow, and there's a lot of them out there, but some are better than others. But having a data set that kind of hones in on the individual's natural tendencies. Again, it's only one set of data, but it allows you to, measure that data versus the data that you got in the interview. So that's a part of the process I would typically recommend. A job shadow is a really good idea. So if you've gone through the interview process, at least a couple of the steps, and you feel pretty interested in the candidate, one thing to consider doing is have them shadow with one of your top salespersons for an hour, a half day, whatever the case might be, and really demonstrate to the candidate what the job looks like. And there's an opportunity to observe the candidate in that job shadow as well, to see if how they're responding to the type of role that they're going to be in. So that's a really useful tool that I don't see a lot of clients use. And then outside of all of that, you have to know what questions to ask in the interview. And I think that's where a lot of my clients in the past have struggled with determining what a great salesperson is. Every salesperson, in my experience, or not every, but most salespeople that I interview, they're all great. They've all always hit their quotas. They've never missed their quotas. They're all number one. Well, how can they all be number one? It doesn't really make sense, right? So you need to be able to dig into their past experience thoroughly and really understand, what did they do? How did they do it? How much of it did they do? And what were their actual results? One of the things I always ask any candidate that I'm interviewing is, if they say I was number 2 or number 1, I want to see the report or see the trophy. And that's not that I don't trust them. It's just that, unfortunately, too many of them say they're number 1 and they can't validate it because maybe they weren't actually number 1. The people that are number 1 and have the trophies, most of the time they save those trophies because they're valuable, right? And when you work hard and become number 1 at something, you get an award, you typically keep it. I know I got a box full of awards that I could show someone if they needed to see it. So things like that help you validate. Again, it's not about not trusting, it's about trust but verify. Make sure that the facts and the data that you uncover in the interview is actually the truth. So that's some of the stuff. Yeah, it's a hard thing overall.
Yeah, no, you went into a lot of those points where these are all things that we talk about with our clients every single day. One of the other things like that I always emphasize to our clients is, just because someone is an account executive or has a certain title at one job does not mean that translates into your job either. Every
Yes.
job is different. Every company sizing it's different. If someone is a VP at Amazon, that doesn't mean that they automatically are a VP at, Bob's kitchen building, right? Like in a, it just, it's very different. So always look at the sizing and the staging of companies, and just digging deep, like you said, as to their metrics, to if they were closing deals and they were number 1 closing deals, that's awesome. How did they get those deals? Were they self-prospecting those deals, or were they coming from a BDR or a marketing team? Those are all really important things to ask.
Totally.
Kind of know how that person worked. So yeah, that's all great advice. Anytime you want a job as a recruiter, you're hired.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, that was great. So Kyle, tell us a little bit about your background. What do you do? Where can people find you, and all that good stuff?
Yeah, sure. No, I love that. So I've spent my entire life in sales, my entire adult life. Got into sales right out of high school, ended up being recruited into a Fortune 500 organization where I spent about 18 years there in sales the entire time. So I started doing the job that I hire and train for today, right? So I'm very familiar with that job, spent many, many years in that job. And a few years ago, after a fun and exciting, successful career in corporate America, I decided I wanted to kind of get out and do my own thing and start serving some smaller, more mid-sized businesses and just helping them be successful. And so really what I do now is I work with small, medium enterprises and sometimes even large enterprises, and I fix sales problems. I'm super passionate about getting up and serving and changing lives. That's really what I get up every day for, starting first and foremost with my 3 children and then moving out into my personal and professional life. And what I've learned is that a lot of entrepreneurs are, have amazing products and amazing services, and they've worked really, really hard to get their businesses off the ground. But in a lot of cases, they just don't understand what proper sales process looks like. And I've identified a large gap in that market, and it's just really widely misunderstood. So my mission is to help business owners really thoroughly understand what good sales process looks like, how to implement it, and how to manage it long term so they can be successful.
Love that. Well, thank you, Kyle, for coming on Funnel Vision. Appreciate your time and all the fantastic advice you've shared.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.